everybody, and welcome to Behind the Curtain with Ade and Ram. On today's show, we have storyteller Jiba Molei Anderson. Hi, Jiba.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Hi, pleasure to have you here. I'm always excited to meet new, interesting people and have these conversations. And I'm going to read your bio. I went through it to where did it go? Oh, here it is. Yeah, as I was saying, I went through it to look for all the big words that I might mess up on. So here we go. So Jiba Molei Anderson is a veteran of the creative industries, working as an illustrator, graphic designer, writer, and educator. In 1999, Anderson formed Griot, I missed that one, Enterprises, a publishing company, visual communication studio, and created its flagship property, The Horseman, which was first released in 2002 to critical acclaim. He is also the curator of the 4 pages, 16 bars, a visual mixtape anthology series, which focuses on independent comics from creators of color, as well as maintaining the Afro Soul Chronicles, a blog about comics, pop culture, politics, and race. Anderson has had numerous one-man and group shows and has been invited to speak about his work and the representation of race and culture at various institutions, including the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Penn State Altoona, Michigan State University, and the Ohio State University. Anderson has also been employed as a graphic designer, animator, art director, and graphic novelist for educational institutions such as the University of Illinois, Chicago, and the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art. Anderson has also made an impact in the world of role-playing games, contributing content to the World of Darkness franchise, Vampire, the Masquerade, Wrath, the Oblivion, Tales of Depravity, They Came From, Classified for Onyx Path Publishing. Recently, Anderson became the proud recipient of the Glyph Awards Lifetime Achievement Pioneer Award for his work in the comic book industry through the East Coast of Black Age Comics Convention. Okay, and we have your website here, which we will post in the description section. So you're a man of many hats and talents. As I saw, going through your website, really enjoy both your illustration and writing. And I guess one of the things I was curious is, basically what sort of lit the fire to get into storytelling and the arts? Like, where did it all begin?
It all began at home. This is what I mean. So I have been born, I was born into a family of artists and educators and entrepreneurs from both sides of the family. From my mother's side, which is the Liberian, the African side, and from my father's side, which is the African American side. And so I was born into that. This is a story that I'm always very happy and proud to tell. My father is an architect. On my mom's side, it's a grip of artists. My late uncle Fritz Massaquoi, was an artist as well. There's so many artists and artisans on my family, in my family. So that was just something that I was born into. You know what I mean? Like literally born into it. At some point, I say that I was genetically bred to either be an artist or an educator or both. And so I'm just following my, DNA's programming. In that sense. So with that, I was able to, I guess you could say, able to choose like any path, artistic path, if I so wanted. But, the visual arts and comic books in particular, that was the medium that spoke to me. And so I just really followed that. And the spark hit me from a very, very early age. The spark hit me from when I picked up a pencil or a crayon or whatever and started scribbling on the walls as a little kid. I figured out, at a very early age, it's like, I like drawing. This is what I want to do. And around the age of 7, I read this book about careers. And one of the books that I read about the career was being a freelance artist. And that really spoke to me. And I'm like, yeah, that's the life that I want for myself. So being a creator, being a storyteller, it hit me at a very, very early age. And I was one of these rare kids that, knew what they wanted to do at an extremely early age. And my parents were extremely supportive of that. Again, coming from a family that they know, about the arts and they are professional artists, that sort of thing. Having, my mom and dad having their oldest son saying that they want to do that for a living. Luckily, I didn't get pushback from that. The only pushback, if you will, that I got from my parents is that my mom wanted me to pursue working for Disney. That's about the only pushback I got. You know what I mean? But other than that, so here I am.
Yeah. And so you said you mentioned comic books. What is it about comic books that attracted you to them?
It is that whole notion of like art and story. That's a good question. What attracted me to comics? It was that fact of, these tales, right? If we go back into telling stories, I was always a big fan of stories. And, and I just kind of gravitated to storytelling. My love of drawing combined with, the love of the written word and love of telling stories. I mean, comics were like that perfect combination, to have the image match with the text to help, guide you and have you figure out what's happening, getting you from point A to B. And then in addition to that, throwing in other things to speak about while you're getting from point A to B. That was the thing that really, really enamored me to comics. Of course, as a kid, getting into the whole superheroic myth, right, was a great entrance point. But where most people who say that they're comic book fans stop at a DC or a Marvel, I realized from an early age, I was interested in the medium itself. I was interested in comic books as a medium. So going beyond DC and Marvel, going to other companies like Charlton and First Comics and the independent sphere, comic strips, and then going into comics from other regions in the world, not just anime or manga, of course, but I mean, looking at comics globally, like from South America, from the Southeast, Indian comics, all of these things. I was just enamored with the medium itself, and that medium spoke to me way more so than the content, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what got me into comics. That's why I chose comics.
And so how did you get access to like different comics from around the world? How did you get introduced to that?
So once I fell in love with comics as a medium, I was just voracious in finding any of that, any and all of that material. Right? I mean, this is before the internet.
Yeah.
I'm a '70s baby and an '80s teenager.
Yeah.
Right? So to find that material, went to the bookstores,
Yeah.
went to the libraries, right? Like seeing that stuff pop up, I was like, oh, this is new. Let me grab this. Let me check this out. Let me learn a little bit about the history of this stuff that I love. Right. So it was, yeah. So, being a nerd basically got me more into comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the aspect of being a nerd and learning everything that you can about a medium that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Right. Above and beyond the characters. I got into like, who are the players, right? Who were the writers?
Mm-hmm.
Who were the artists of it? Who were the people that put this stuff together, right?
Yeah.
And really looking at it as it is. It's an art form. And so I always pursued it as an art form. I always educated myself on it as an art form, right? Because honestly, knowing about the characters and stuff like that, that's just scratching the surface. That's the easy part, right? Of comics. And that's where most people stop. Me, I went deeper. Like, above and beyond the characters that I like, I'm just like, who created these characters, right? Who are the people that made these stories? And that's where my pursuit and study guided me, right? And also seeing that there's more than just, American comics. I always wanted to see what else was out there.
Yeah.
So my curiosity of that really just propelled me in, learning about this thing that was eventually going to become my career.
Yeah, it reminds me of filmmakers, and I know that you make films as well. That
Working on them.
A filmmaker will watch a movie, let's say, with a non-filmmaker, and the non-filmmaker would say, "Oh, this is a great movie. I like this star actor," and the filmmaker would say, "Who directed that? What other things did this person direct?" Like, that's the first thing. Who did the cinematography? And
yeah,
yeah.
I'm definitely that guy. With all the arts, like I'm like that with movies. I'm exactly like that with music, as well. So again, it's just I say that's the nerd in me. Like I just need to know,
Yeah.
I need to know who made the work, and then beyond that, I need to peep out the intention of the work, right? Because that's the stuff that grabs me. You know what I mean? Is the intent, is the intention, and the underlying. I always want to know beneath the surface, right? That's part of my psyche as well. Like I just need to know things, and really understand them. Yeah. And understand why I like them.
Yeah. So
Did
there's
you
this.
ever get to meet some of the people who wrote these comics?
I've met, when they say never meet your heroes, I have met so many of my heroes. And for the most part, those heroes have guided me in my career. When I first entered the industry, or wanted to enter the industry, the company that I wanted to work for was Milestone. They were the first cats that I went to show my portfolio. And they are also a big reason why Griot Enterprises exists. Because when I met Dennis Cohen and I showed him my portfolio, he went through the stuff that I did with DC and Milestone characters and Marvel characters. And then I had some work in there with my concept at the time. And he looked at me and he's like, "You want to make your own comics, don't you?" And I was like, "Why are you looking at my soul like that?" "Yes, I do. But at first, I would like to, I need to get my feet wet." So I knew that I had to work on other people's comics. And he said, "Well, if you want to do comics, just do comics. But if you want to work for Milestone, you need to learn this, this, that, and the third." So he set me on this. He set me on the path. George Perez, may he rest in peace, helped me. Was a positive influence. Like, was a bit of a cheerleader. You know what I mean? I ran into him again a few years before he passed, and it was like his last project that he worked on. La Born in Kenya. He did a variant cover for it. And I got that variant cover and I signed it. And at that time, that's when the Horseman Manifest Destiny came out. And I gave him, a copy of that and, thanked him, right, for everything that he done. And he told me how proud he was, how he was proud of how far I came in my career, right? I met Dwayne McDuffie, one of the architects of Milestone. And come to find out that he was a fan of the Horseman when it came out. You know what I mean? So it's like I met a lot of these cats. Met Christopher Priest. Cool dude, right? Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. I've met so many of these people. Also know a lot of these people that I came up with, and I met my heroes, and my heroes, in large part, were cool dudes and women, and they helped me in my career, not in terms of getting me gigs or anything like that, but in terms of breaking down the philosophy and showing me how to operate in this industry. And so, so I owe a great deal of that to them and to that other end of the education of being a professional in this business.
And I'm sure you've been able to mentor other people, artists and storytellers as well.
That's the other part of my gig, being a teacher.
Yeah.
As well. And it is great to see so many of my students, doing their thing, right? Like every time I do C2E2, the big convention here in Chicago, it's really nice to see my students and whatnot having their own booths, doing their own thing, like pushing forward in their careers and doing well, right? That's in terms of being a teacher, that's the part that makes me proud, is seeing them succeed in their careers and doing their thing. That lets me know that I did my job. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or, I was a piece of their puzzle to success.
So you mentioned the Horseman Manifest Destiny. Can we talk a little bit about that project? And
okay.
I actually want to, if it's okay with you, can I bring up some of the images?
Sure. I did mention Manifest Destiny, even though with George Perez he got Lumumba Funk, but I did mention Manifest Destiny. I did. So that was Lumumba Funk was the book before Manifest Destiny, and then I did another book after that. Anyway, yes. But yeah, go ahead with that. I was just putting the chronology in order in my mind. So what was the question again? What were you asking about? And you said you wanted to put some images up there?
As we talk about it, I just wanted to, so that actually, if I can, seems like, hold on.
Okay.
Just so that our audience is a little bit familiar with the. Can you talk a little bit about the project? Where did it start? How did it start?
Okay, so Manifest Destiny in particular. That started because I needed to do another Horseman book. In a sense, the long and the short of it, even though I do have another Horseman project waiting in the wings, but Manifest Destiny, that just started. It started during the second year of the pandemic, and I just started working on stuff. One of the things what really sparked it was that I had a little coin, and at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of tired of seeing my artwork on my characters, so I would like to see what other people did with my characters. And like, I had a little bit of money, so I had some time to spend, and some money to spend on getting some commissions. And so I pursued Sean Hill, who's blowing up right now, doing work for DC, doing work for Milestone in particular. I hit up another artist called Aries, and then I hit up compadre of mine, Kenji Marshall, because I already knew Kenji would do great stuff on the Horseman, and I wanted to get their visions for it. So I commissioned the work. From that, I was like, okay, those look great. I need to craft a story. Oh, and another thing, my godbrother, who was the inspiration for Ogun, Kofi Boone, he had an Ogun story that he wanted to write. And I was like, this is really cool because Kofi and I grew up together. And one of the things that we did growing up together, we're both comic book heads, and we both were drawing stories and coming up with stories and things of that nature. So with him coming to me and wanting to do an Ogun story, it was like, oh, that's cool. That's like, that's us being kids again. You know what I mean? That's us being like little kids again. And so from that was sort of the impetus to begin creating Manifest Destiny. And again, the Horseman Manifest Destiny, it pushes the story along. It allowed me to work in the Horseman universe that deals with this very past, present, future, Sankofa kind of thing. So it was like, with Kofi's story, we got into the ancient Ogun a little bit, which was really cool. And then from Lumumba Funk, I was really establishing the other group of entities in the Horseman universe called the Manifest. So that allowed me to, get that story developed a little bit further. And that was starting from me, redrawing those characters and like, okay, let me put that in the story. And then the third part, the One Day War, that was something, all me. So Manifest Destiny, that's how that came together, if you wanted to know the thought process. And you see how convoluted that thought process is.
It sounds like an artist, and a creative. I love this image, and Oya has a special place in my heart. That's one of the deities that I talk to quite often. What inspired you to create this character?
What inspired me to create? Well, to create the Horseman in general. What inspired me was that it came out of my thesis in graduate school, and my thesis, the question or the statement that I created or I thought about was that there are really cool Black characters, but in various comic book companies, but we don't have an iconic comic book, Black superhero team. And in order to create that iconic superhero team, I went back to what is the root of superheroes, and the root of superheroes is mythology. in American comics, that mythology is Greco-Roman. It's the Judeo-Christian faith systems. It's a gross appropriation of Egyptian and Asian mythos. So I went back to the source of it. Our people that came in through the states. You know what I mean? And through the diaspora, if you will. Our people from West and Central Africa, and our faith systems there. And I came upon the Orishas, and so that was the mythological root that I would use to create my my world. And so that's where the Horseman came about. Now, Oya in particular, if you want to go back to the Oya image, again, as I said, the characters were influenced. I mentioned my god brother Kofi, and he was the inspiration for Ogun. The human avatars of the Horsemen were based on members of my family, and I assigned based on, and this is my found family as well as my biological family. And the Orisha were assigned, the person that became the Orisha was based on their personality, right? So with Oya, that's based off of my god sister-in-law, Ajua. And in particular, Ajua's look, I remember it was like one Thanksgiving, I was at her parents' house, and I saw a photo of Ajua. She was like 4 or 5. And she had just like this hard rock grill on her face, right? And she had these Afro puffs, and like I was like dance recital and stuff like that. And her face was so screw faced as this 4-year-old with the Afro puffs. And I was like, you know what? I went to her. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make a character based on you, and she's gonna have those Afro puffs. And she was like, ha ha ha, joke. Next thing you know, this is Oya.
Yeah.
And so that's where the look for Oya came from. You know?
That's great. Yeah. Okay.
You've mentioned Griot, which is your company, Sankofa. Can you go a bit more into the African history influence on your comics?
That influence is, again, it's based on my family, right? Because my mother is Liberian, I am Liberian, not just in terms of the freed enslaved people coming back to Africa and establishing that country, but my family is indigenous, Liberian. So I'm Vi, right? So growing up with that, I grew up with the strong sense of self, the identity. You know what I mean? I was very lucky to have that firm identity to the continent. Not something that was just pieced together or like I read a book and and I'm assimilating it. I had that there. You know what I mean? Like the history's right there. So that was always a part of my DNA, and that was always a part of my storytelling process. And that was always something that I wanted to share. Again, like I said, I pursued this stuff at a very early age, and also some of the educators that I had from a very early age, going into my teenage years, like, some of my art teachers, again, Steve Pablo Davis, may he rest in peace. I mean, that cat was a radical, right? That cat was, a socialist Jew who painted with Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. You know what I mean? And that's part of my DNA. And he was telling me that, looking at my work, he's like, yeah, you need to represent your people. You know what I mean? You need to represent your culture. Like, you need to do this. And that stuck with me. And it's so very true, because it's like, African cultures are still very much untapped, and they're still opening up, right? You got to understand, like I was on this joint, and the Horseman came out in 2002. came out a good 10, 11 years before other cats started saying, like, oh, look at the Orishas, oh, look at our, we've got these too. Like I was there. I grew up with that. And so that was just part of my DNA. It was like a no-brainer, right? To bring that into the space, and especially in the early to mid 90s when you had the rise, really, then they call it the Black Age of comics. Now we call it Black comics. But with the rise of Milestone Media, with Brother Man, with Tribe, with Ania, with some of these other outfits, right? That showed me that, yeah, our stories need to be told. We can't wait for the DC or the Marvels to tell our stories, not authentically. You know what I mean? And guaranteed ain't none of them really delving into, African history and faith systems and things of that nature. And to a large extent, not many of, our African American contemporaries were really delving into that in a real way. So that was a space that I found where I can make my mark and I can be unique and tell those other aspects, and develop those other aspects and make them a part of, again, this superheroic myth, right? Again, I was ahead of the game when the Horseman came out. Now it's like everybody else is catching up. See what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that to be arrogant. I'm saying that because it's truth, right? It's archaeological. You can carbon date that joint. It's true. So, and I'm not saying that I'm the only one who delved into that, right? But especially in the 90s, I was someone who was delving that into in a real way, as sort of a bit of counter programming to the Afrocentric movement. Like we all came from Egypt, and the focus on Egypt, and it's like Africa's way bigger than Egypt. You know what I mean? Like our story is much wider than that, right? We have so much more to offer, and that's why I wanted to explore that, because nobody else was, right? That was the reason why I chose the name Griot, or me and my partner chose the name Griot for the company, right? To infuse that, like, no, this is, I'm going to keep it a buck here. They're like, this is real. Like, we're really, really going into it. And I'm really going into this exploration of the continent and our faith systems and our history and our peoples. And just really infusing that into the work that I do, specifically the Horseman, but in general, all of the work that Griot publishes is a celebration of the African experience. And when I say the African experience, I mean the diasporatic African experience. So not just the continent, not just the states, not just the Caribbean, you know what I mean? Not just the UK, you know what I mean? But it's a celebration of wherever we are. And so Griot Enterprises is a very Pan-African, and from being Pan-African, global, mindset when it comes to creating work and publishing work.
And one of the things I've noticed, which I think it's great about the work that you do, like as you mentioned, that you're expressing and sharing African culture, and you don't see that a lot, and you see a kind of here in the West, African Americans creating art like let's say like in the DC world, in comic book world, or in film, but they're kind of creating the European style of art, of films, but just having African Americans in it. So it's not bringing it's not bringing the culture. It's some of the same European themes and things of that. The European culture, rather than the African culture and the history and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Okay, when it comes to DC and Marvel, yes. When it comes to independent comics, especially Black comics, we are seeing more of that true exploration, right? Like, I'm reminded right away of Greg Anderson, Ellie says he's not of the Were Spider, where he takes, Anansi the Spider, and his character is the son of Anansi, you know what I mean? And his work is very Haitian, you know what I mean? He's Haitian, so, he approaches it from that angle. You also have, another Haitian artist like Dorfis Jean, where she has her character Spirit's Destiny. She just finished a successful Kickstarter for Macadanal, her new series, which again deals with Haitian history as well. You also have some, African creators. I mean, well, I think of a number of cats like Roy Okupe with Unique Studios. You know what I mean? He keeps it real Nigerian with his stories. There was also a book that just came out from Image called New Masters, from again some African cats. I believe they're from Nigeria as well. Again, in the independent sphere, you know what I mean? We're seeing more of this authentic exploration of the diaspora.
Yeah.
In there, so it's growing. In DC and Marvel, no, you're not going to really see that, with the exception of Black Panther. But even then, as much as I love Black Panther, and some people may get mad, I mean, Black Panther is a fictional. Wakanda is a fictional African country. You know what I mean? And again, one can argue that Wakanda is the African American interpretation of an African society.
Yeah,
you know
that's one of the critiques I think I have about it.
Gotcha. So don't get me wrong. It's gotten, definitely when Christopher Priest was working on the book, he infused more Africa in it at that time than it was ever, was ever established in there. But what's interesting about Black Panther, what's interesting about the criticisms of Black Panther, especially in the comics nowadays, is that you do have, a lot of Black fans of Black Panther. They're dissatisfied with all of the writers that have worked on Black Panther since. They've been dissatisfied with Tanishi Coates' run. They've been dissatisfied with John Ridley's run. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. And there's reasons for that. Number one, because Coates and Ridley try to address certain things that are happening on the continent, which doesn't sit well with some of the African American fans of it, because it's bringing a realness to what's happening on the continent. But above and beyond that, another thing that they critique about, that they are upset about T'Challa's supposed lack of strength because of, say, for instance, the prominence of women in the Black Panther comics. Ironically, women have always been a strong component of the Black Panther comics, right? From Monica Lynn in the 70s with Don McGregor's run, to the creation of Ramonda in the 80s, you know what I mean? To the creation of the Dora Milaje with Priest runs, to the creation of Shuri, with Reginald Hudlin's run. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. Women have always been a strong part of T'Challa's journey. Some brothers don't like that. and they think that's new. Yeah, Did you say why is that?
Yeah.
You know why. You know why. Come on. Let's not be, let's not be coy about that. And another thing that I found as well, and I say this, is that Black Panther in some ways have been written from the recent runs have been written from a place of a Black pessimism. In a sense, I think that's a real intellectual thing that's happened, or it has been happening in academic circles, if you will, and it filters into the comics. It's like the sense of Black pessimism, like Coates' run had that in there as well. So, so those criticisms of Black Panther are in there, because T'Challa is, our guy, if you will, right? T'Challa is our Batman and Captain America. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Combined into one. And some brothers don't like the way that T'Challa is being portrayed. Like, definitely, you got some cats up in arms with the upcoming Wakanda Forever. You know what I mean? Like, where are the strong Black male characters? It's like, man, you know what? Shut up. Because these are the same cats that were not satisfied with the depiction of Luke Cage. They weren't satisfied with Sam Wilson becoming Captain America in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They weren't satisfied with Black Lightning. I mean, it's like, what do y'all want?
Yeah,
What do you want? You know what I mean? So yeah. So so it is interesting that I would say Black Panther is sort of the epitome of the African American fantasy of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense. So that's kind of how I would leave it right now.
Yeah. And why do you think more stories like that aren't getting it? I know in the independent realm there is more of that, but in the mainstream, why do you think?
Because the mainstream they would have to pay some money for new characters being created.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the time for like original characters to come out through DC and Marvel, that's over. That's been a wrap since 2008. That was a wrap when the Iron Man film made money, when the Dark Knight made money. You know what I mean? That's done. You know what I'm saying? So it is a lot easier for those companies to create Black versions of those characters. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why Nubia has finally come to some sort of prominence in DC after 40 years of being a cipher. Like, she's only become a character literally like in the last 2 years, right? That's why we have Jackson King as the Black Aquaman. That is why we have Jace Fox as the Black Batman, even though his brother, Luke Fox was Batwing. And even if we go back before Luke Fox, they had the African Batwing, David Savimbe. You know what I mean? If we want to talk about a character that's been short shrifted, I'm like, what happened to David Savimbe? You know what I mean? Which was, again, this fictional African character. You see what I'm saying? So definitely, because DC and Marvel will not, the last original character, by my mind, that Black character that was created, that was DC. And that was David Michael Bendis and Dave Walker's creation, Naomi. Right? Completely original character, not tied to any other DC Marvel legacy character. You see what I mean? But other than that, nah, it's either the characters that have existed or in DC's case, dressing up some of the characters in blackface.
So would that mean it would require a whole new studio to go a completely different direction and go through completely original characters and original comics and original stories?
Completely and utterly. I mean, that's why the Black comics movement exists, right? That's why you have all these different labels like Second Sight Publishing, like Griot, like Unique Studios, like Webway Comics, like FSK, like I mean, there's so many that that are rattling around about the tip of my tongue. Unique Studios, you know what I mean? Like there's a whole cottage industry of Black comics, right? That have been making moves, right? Have been making moves, been getting development deals, like been taking it to the next stage of transmedia. Even shoot, their name is on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, I'll come back to them later. But anyway, as I'm saying, like there are lots of independent Black comics that are out there and companies out there trying to or working to establish their footholds, and they're doing it. The issue is that the fan base are so inured to DC and Marvel that they rarely look outside of DC and Marvel. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas, and they're like, looking at DC and Marvel for saviors. And the thing about it is that no, we've been saved. We saved ourselves, if you will. If you just spent the money to, get stories that represent you, you'll all be good. But at the same time, it's like, but then we're not part of the bandwagon that is DC and Marvel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the thing about it is that, some people are really all about that adjacency, right? They're all obsessed with the gaze of the other. That's how I like to call it. And they feel that they are validated if the other's gaze validates them, as opposed to validating themselves, right? And I'm talking about fandom, but I'm also talking about, some of the creators as well.
Yeah. Can you explain that again? That phrase?
The gaze of the other?
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of self-explanatory, but okay.
So is it like seeking like a sense of self from someone else or what someone else thinks?
Well, because of the fact that up until fairly recently, our fantastic visions of ourselves were not created by people that looked like us.
Yeah.
It's that sense of validation, right? They call it the mainstream, like, we want from mainstream acceptance.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I come from the hip hop era, right? And so I have a very hip hop mentality to creating this stuff. It's like, hip hop didn't start off in the mainstream. The mainstream came to hip hop.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And hip hop was not created in the pursuit of getting that quote unquote mainstream acceptance, the gaze of the other, if you will.
Yeah.
Hip hop filled a need. You know what I mean? It filled a need for us in the beginning in the States. You know what I mean? Like that amalgamation of the, Jamaican sound clash system, you know what I mean? With the Puerto Rican, influence coming in, not only with the tagging, but also with the movement, that sort of thing, right? That was us, that was us expressing ourselves. And in us expressing ourselves, we created this community to express ourselves. that community expanded, right, and became hip hop culture. You know what I'm saying? You know, MCing, DJing, breaking, tag, and also fashion. You know what I mean? We became pioneers, we became trendsetters, so on and so forth. And when that culture hit the fever pitch, that's when the mainstream, or quote unquote, the commodity and the money came in, right? So I always talk about the three-pronged system, you know, how to build. You first start with community. From that community becomes culture. And then from that culture, you get the commerce, right? And that sort of thing. But the thing about it is the authenticity of that came from within us.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It did not come from the other, right? The other, we did not need the others' approval in order to do what we needed to do in order to express ourselves. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I say that people are still dependent upon the gaze of the other, because again, they think about the culture, they only think about the commodity aspect of it.
Yeah.
They think about the end goal of that. You know what I mean? They don't think about the community or the culture part. Even some cats, when they get the commodity or the money, you know, they get upset. They're like, how come the culture doesn't accept us? It's because you didn't engage the culture.
Yeah.
You didn't engage. First, you didn't engage the community. And then you did not, you know, become an active part of the culture because you kept just going for that commodity. You just kept going for that cash, that commerce right away. You know what I mean? And the thing about commerce is that money comes and goes. You see what I'm saying? But one of the ways that you keep making money is if at first, you know, you become a part of the community, and second, you respect the culture. You see what I'm saying? Like there's like, you know, there's some cats right now, you know, they're like, oh yeah, I raised $3 million for this book, yada, yada, yada. Cool. Where are you going to be in a year? You know what I'm saying? Like you got that money now, but are we going to hear about you in the next year or two? That's the question. And that's coming from someone who's been in this game for 20 plus years. You know? And it's a situation, it's like, yeah, I'm not quote unquote rich. You know what I mean? I'm not rolling in dough. I'm doing different things. I'm working my way in there. But one of the reasons why I've been here so long is because I'm a part of the community and I push the culture forward. You know what I mean? And then from that, yeah, you know, I'm beginning to eat off of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm still going to be here because I'm still going to be part of the community and I'm still going to be pushing the culture. The first two important bits of this game.
Yeah. And I think you had the advantage that there's a lot of people that don't have that. You had that, you know, from your parents, you know, that strong sense of self, you know, from your family. And that's a really important thing because even before going to the community and sourcing from the community authentically, before going to, you know, what's in vogue in the mainstream and seeking that approval, but even before going to the community, I think one has to first, it seems, source from within themselves, you know, authentically. And if that piece is missing, you know, they're going to seek that approval from, you know, I'm going to make it, you know, I follow this blueprint and then I'll make it and then I'll get the sense of, you know, I've arrived.
Yeah, that is a Snapple top fact. You know, I've said this time and time again in many interviews. As a matter of fact, my pops just had his 75th birthday, and I said this, you know, at his birthday party. It was like, I'm extremely lucky. Like you know, and I'll say that all day, every day. I'm extremely lucky that I was born into the family that I was born into. I am extremely lucky that I was born into a family that understands what I do. You know what I mean? Because a lot of them do it as well. And that are very proud of who they are. you know, again, on the Liberian side and the African American side.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, my pops grew up poor in Detroit, you know what I mean, late 40s, 50s, and 60s. Like, you know, he had such a strong sense of self that he knew that the streets weren't for him. You know what I mean? That he pursued architecture, that he got into the University of Detroit by becoming a fencer, getting a fencing scholarship. Like, how many brothers do you know that are fencers? You know what I'm saying? That's my dad, right? Like, you know, like I grew up with the Black Arrow Flint, right? You know what I'm saying? So I grew up in a family of people who knew who they were and achieved, you know what I mean, and understood who they were and pushed it forward. You know what I'm saying? And made it happen. Like, you know, being in a family that like obstacles, like, you know, what's an obstacle? That's just a challenge. You know, okay, you got to deal with that, move that out the way. So, yeah, I was very, very lucky to be born in that situation. And I understand that a lot of people aren't born into that situation, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. People spend a lifetime and, you know, doing all sorts of inner work and workshops and everything just to get that, which you got, you know, as a child, because it's, you know, it became part of, you know, who you are. You know, you just absorbed it. And a good deal of people become programmed, you know, and spend a lifetime deprogramming a lot of this stuff and finding out who they are, you know. So yeah.
I was lucky. Yeah, I quote unquote knowledge of self. I had knowledge of self from a very young age.
Yeah. So I think you answered that question about looking for the glance. How does it go again?
Free from the gaze.
Free from the gaze. Okay,
Yeah,
I think we just, yeah.
I say yes.
Yeah.
I am free from the gaze, and I've been free from the gaze.
Yeah.
For many years. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we went a little bit deeper into that.
Right. And I see how your what you call it, how the words are being interpreted. When they say gaze, I mean GAZE, not GAYS. So when you see this, I don't want to have my LGBTQ community coming at me, being all man. It's like, what you got against gays? No, gays, GAZE. Okay, so yeah, so I had to address the interpreter for the closed caption. Okay, so
we talked a little bit about the DC and Marvel in the mainstream. I would love, and how people tend to go to that. Okay, well, it has the stamp of approval. I'm going to go watch that movie. But I would love. I'm kind of sick of those movies because it's like the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, they're entertaining, but I know what's going to happen before it's going to happen. Same formula, and it's like, okay, this is going to happen and that, and it doesn't help, you know, me being a filmmaker. I'm kind of noticing all of, you know, the peaks and everything. But I would love to see. Have you ever thought of this? The Horseman being on the big screen.
That's the next question. And again, I have to answer that question cryptically because of stuff that's happening right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're in the process. Yes. So I'm just gonna leave it there because I don't want to reveal too much right now, but before it happens. But yeah. That's part of the mission statement of the Horseman. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of that also, it's interesting that you talk about the superhero movie formula, because what's interesting is that the superhero movie is kind of like the Western of the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That's the thing that's going right now. Like, you know, people said the same thing about Westerns and whatnot. And then you had the spaghetti Western, right? Mm-hmm. Which kind of broke that mold, you know, which made Clint Eastwood a star and things of that nature. Are superhero movies formulaic? To an extent, yeah. You know what I mean? Especially if, you read the books, like really read the books and stuff like that. I mean, it's a little formulaic. And when I go to see those movies, or even those shows now, I like how the Marvel shows are breaking those formulas but applying different formulas to like the superhero world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I love She-Hulk. They said She-Hulk is going to be it's going to be a half-hour comedy like Ally McBeal, and it was. And I'm like, that worked for She-Hulk, and it was perfect. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was awesome. You know what I mean? Werewolf by Night, so good, so good. Taking the Universal, taking it back to its roots. You know what I mean? Out of the Universal, monsters realm and whatnot. Like, spot on. What's interesting about the formula is like people complain about the formula, but then when they don't get the formula, they get mad because they didn't get the formula. You know what I mean? And that sort of thing. I think that the good ones, they know what the formula is, but they infuse other things into the mix. Like Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi was Marvel's Kung Fu movie. I got that. I was like, word, it's a great Kung Fu movie. You know what I mean? For Marvel. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, people are like, well, what about Five Deadly Blah, blah. Yeah, I know. I'm a fan of the Shaw brothers. Like, I know real Kung Fu movies. Shang-Chi was Marvel's Kung Fu movie, and it was well done because they brought different elements of other Kung Fu movies in there. You know what I mean? We got the wuxia. You know what I mean? We got the Jackie Chan-isms. You know what I'm saying? We got little bits of the Raid in there and that sort of thing. It was a mashup, like Asian America is a mashup. You know what I mean? And we got that, and that worked, right? That worked for those films. I think when it doesn't work is when these movies follow the formula too closely and don't bring anything else to the table. I bring up Bloodshot as a perfect example. Bloodshot was just a bad movie. Vin Diesel taking that valiant character, and turning it into a movie. Like, it didn't have the heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It didn't have heart. It didn't bring anything new to the table. That was kind of like a boilerplate kind of script kind of thing. And that's where the formula gets janky. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it's like, if we want to be honest about it, like, all of these, everything we do has some sort of formula. It's how we play with the formula. It's like a recipe, right? You know what I mean? It's like, speaking of that, we'll keep it African a little bit. It's like the recipe for jollof rice, if you will. You know what I mean? The Ghanaians have their version of it. The Nigerians have their version of it.
Senegalese.
Liberians have our version of it, which is the best version, by the way. You know what I'm saying? So it's like basically, it's a different recipe, right? And it's what you bring to the recipe that is going to make it delicious, or are you just going to say, go on with that? You know what I mean? Like, this ain't real jollof rice. You know what I mean? This is like some clown trying to make jollof rice, but they don't know. Yeah, they don't know. What goes into that, right? So I look at movies in general, kind of like that. You know what I mean? So it's like superhero movies. They're good, until they get whack, until they get too much into the formula, right? Yeah.
I like films that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. That kind of stretch you a little bit, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be, and not in a bad way,
right?
In a way that makes sense to the story, but it's just, I'm just not used to that, and it's almost like a jarring, wait a minute, so I like those because I mean, I'm a big fan of like Andrei Tarkovsky and a lot of the old filmmakers that would just stay on one shot for like 1 minute or 2 minutes and slow dolly, but all the details in that frame and everything you notice, like everything is intentional, but it really tests your patience because you want to go to the next thing. You're so
Gotcha.
used to, you know.
So is your argument about, say, for instance, superhero films, is that they don't push technique enough? Because that's an aspect of the storytelling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, if in that case, you know, where I mean, we're speaking from more of a cinephile kind of stance.
Yeah.
And, you know, and yeah, I mean, sure, those movies, you know, could take some of those chances, you know what I mean? More of those technical chances, you know, if it's appropriate, right?
Yeah.
If you want to, you know, if you want to flip the script a little bit on the storytelling technique, that sort of thing, we could see a little bit of that. But I think, I mean, it has to work for the story.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You know, you just can't throw it in there to throw it in there, right? It's like design. You know, everything has a reason to be there. Everything has a reason to exist. You know, and so with that, you know, when you're doing those things, like it has to be done for a reason. Because again, we've seen it where people bring things in there for no reason, and you're like, "The hell is this? Like, why? Why did they do this?"
Yeah.
I mean, case in point, you know, I'll talk about the 4-hour slog that was Zack Snyder's Justice League. I mean, goddamn, like you can cut 2 hours of that movie just by speeding up some of the scenes, you know. And again, with that movie, like the reason why I front on that movie so hard, is because in terms of the spirits. You know what I mean? Especially the spirit of Justice League.
Yeah.
That spirit wasn't there. Right?
Yeah.
The spirit of heroism wasn't there. You see what I'm saying? On the flip side, I would say that Black Adam did more for that. Like, if, like, for instance, I looked at Black Adam and I was prepared not to enjoy Black Adam. But when I saw Black Adam, I'm like, y'all actually could have started the DCEU with Black Adam, because you had some nice tie-ins there. And yeah, you know, the grim and gritty anti-hero, blah, blah, blah. But you still had, you know, the heroism a little bit, you know, with Justice Society. You still had, it wasn't dour, right? It wasn't dour. It wasn't soulless. It wasn't depressing. You know what I mean? It was exciting. And yes, Black Adam is a true anti-hero. I mean, the dude's a goon. Right? You know what I mean? But he's a goon protecting his people. You know what I'm saying? And the things that these little things that make superhero movies enjoyable. You know what I mean? Like certain things, like, and I'm not ruining the movie. Like, for instance, Black Adam, you know, like, didn't believe in doors, just busting through windows, floating through, busting through walls and stuff like that. And at a certain point, I'm like, come on, man, that's just disrespectful. You can open the door. Come on, dude. Come on, man. You know, but it's those little, you know, those little things, right? That that kind of draw you in and link you into the story, which Zack Snyder's Justice League did not have at all.
Yeah.
Right? Did not have those points. You know what I mean? So yeah, so you know, when we talk about those things, you know, we can get nitpicky into you know cinematically what works and doesn't work. Right?
Yeah. Just to want to let you know, it's an hour and 16 minutes now. So
okay.
I want to keep to your schedule. Let's see. Like Ron sent me something. I think it was yesterday. Do you do do you love what you do for work? It was something like that, right? Was that
Yeah, with some of that. Yeah.
yeah.
It's about, we should be able to love our jobs, love
Mm.
what we do.
Yeah, and just by how you light up when you talk about all this stuff, it's just like I know you could just go on and on and on, and you just every little detail, and so
Yeah, we can nerd out about it. I mean,
yeah,
the thing about being creative is that you have to love what you do. That's the only way it's going to work,
yeah,
right? It's especially being in comics, because if you try to get into comics to become rich, find another job. like come on. like this is what being in the arts is a crapshoot,
yeah,
right? It's a crapshoot, and you're hoping, come on, seven, come on, seven, roll it, damn snake, you know what I mean? That
yeah,
sort of thing. And it's a career that you don't necessarily retire from, right? You have to love what you do. Like, I think about Ray Charles. It's a good example. How, he had just come out with a new album before he passed away. You know what I mean? Like real creatives don't retire per se. I mean, unless, you're a dancer and, you can't move like that anymore, but you go into choreography, right? You find different aspects of it,
yeah,
writers, as long as you can, you know what I mean, type or dictate or something, you're always doing it. Same thing, if you're a painter, if you're, if you're a designer, if you're an illustrator, if any of these things, right? You have to love what you do. It's a calling, it's not as much of career, it's a calling. Like,
yeah,
we do this because we have to do it. We do this because our spirit demands it of us, And honestly, we do it if we get paid or not. Now, with that being said, if you're going to ask me to do something, you need to have a check, because, people hear that, oh, like, yeah, you love doing it. Yeah, I love doing it for me, but if I'm doing it for you, where's the money? and even then, even though I do it for myself, I'm still looking for a paycheck. Why do you think like I'm selling this stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Why do you think I'm doing these Kickstarters and that sort of thing? I may give something away for free once in a blue moon, but that's kind of like, first taste is free. You want more, it's going to cost you.
Yeah, it's
So yeah.
I find it's always the favors, like when I used to do a lot of editing work and film work for free when you're first starting out because you're just happy to have anything to do. But it's like the ones that don't pay you, they were the ones that
Always
kept
want the
wanting
most.
more. Like,
They
oh,
always
can you change
want the
this little
most.
part?
Right. They always want the most. Like when people try to come at me with a freebie, I always say this to them, and again, it's very true. I'm like, my family pays me full price, even when I tell them that I would do it for free, because they respect my time. So if my family is going to pay me for my time, who are you to ask me to do it for free? like simple and plain, right?
Yeah.
So, just keeping it real, keeping it, 100%, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, in order to do this stuff, you have to love it. You can't like it. You have to love it. Right? Especially if you're going to make a career out of it.
Yeah.
And with that career, you have to be versatile with the career, right? I mean, being an illustrator, being a graphic designer, being a writer, that's part of it. Also being an educator is a big part of it, right? This is all a part of my career. And this was another thing that I realized. And I actually realized this, again, studying artist careers, also having, I'm surrounded by artists, like my friends, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
My really close friends, good friends, we're artists, we're musicians, we're DJs, we're visual artists, we're writers, that sort of thing, right? And so we all know the hustle, we all know the grind, and we all know that, you need to diversify your bonds in order to survive out here. I made the decision a long time ago that as much as possible, I would use my art to pay for my art.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So teaching is part of me using my art to pay for my art. When I worked in advertising and marketing, those things as well. All those things helped, and I applied that to my practice and my business and things of that nature. But at the same time, if I'm looking for other gigs and things of that nature, I'm looking for creative gigs to help, fuel and finance what I'm doing with Rio.
Yeah. Yeah. And how was that transition of, as an artist, and you become very skilled at certain things, but then now taking on other things that you want to learn to sort of enable you to continue to do your art and continue to do the work that you do, like anything, like teaching? Did it come naturally, or working in advertising, or things of this nature?
So working in advertising, that came out of, me doing my bachelor's in illustration and photography, doing a master's in visual communication. All of that was to become a better comic book creator, but all of that applies to the professional world as well. So yeah, so going into advertising, going into marketing and things of that nature, that made sense, that sort of thing. I got into teaching because and my mom will love that I'm telling this story. I got into education because in 2001, I remember this vividly, in 2001, January 31st, I got laid off from my advertising gig. A grip of us got laid off from our advertising gigs, right? And I was looking to get back into another advertising gig because I'm like, that's where I need to make money in order to do the comics, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was talking to my mom about having a tough time finding a gig and whatnot. And she's like, you should go into teaching. You should go into teaching. You have the gift. You have the gift. And I was like, no, Mom, I can't find a job anywhere, and I'll prove it to you by applying to a teaching gig. Of course, I got that interview for it. And then I go into it. The first class that I taught was a storyboarding gig. And in the beginning, I'm like, man, I don't know storyboarding. How am I going to teach storyboarding? And then I was, wait a second, storyboards aren't nothing but comics for movies. Okay, now I'm in. All right. Mm-hmm. And she was okay. And so as I went into teaching, I did have the gift because I modeled my teaching off of my favorite teachers. And I also realized that teaching was a performance. And, part of me coming up, it's like I did a lot of theater and that sort of thing. And so it was like the summer when I was teaching my second round of classes. And afterwards, a student came to me with a problem beyond teaching, but I was able to help her out with. Felt that moment. And so at that moment, I called my mom up and I was like, okay, Mom, it's probably the only time you're going to hear this. So accept it, embrace it, cherish it, just deal with it forever. You were right. And yes, I do have the gift for teaching. Because again, as I said at the beginning of this interview, the whole grip of my family are educators. Right? Yeah. So, it's in my DNA. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Yeah. So my mom will love that I included that story in this. You know what I mean? In this interview.
Great.
Talking about all the parts that make up me,
Yeah. So we're almost we're over time now. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would have liked to mention, or Ron? Is there anything?
Yeah, it's just is there anything you would say to anybody out there? They have an idea, they have a story. Where do I go? You answered a bit of it by just saying you love what you do, but is there anything else?
I mean, definitely explore it. Definitely develop your voice, right? Like, don't do a version of something that somebody else has done, because that's already been done. Tell your story. Be comfortable with your voice so that you can speak properly. And when I say speak properly, I'm saying speak authentically, so you can create something new, because your voice is unique. Everybody's voice is unique. Yeah. So bring that into the mix. Little shameless plug, if I may, for a couple things. So out right now, if you go to grioenterprises.com, you can pick up The Horseman Manifest Destiny, which was mentioned earlier. You can also pick up the 20th anniversary of The Horseman, the book Birth of the Spark. Mm-hmm. You could also pick that up at grioenterprises.com. Finally, I should be launching a Kickstarter soon, which is going to be for a book that I had published early on before I really knew stuff, but I'm republishing it, called The Manifesto, The Tao of Jiba Molei Anderson, which goes a little bit more into my philosophy and teachings as a writer, as an illustrator, and as a designer. And it's also chock full with cool comic book stuff, which is not The Horseman. Mm-hmm. So you can get a little bit of the inside stories of how I approach, my writing, drawing, and also designing. And also you can read some, background stories of how I got a couple of particular gigs, mm-hmm. And that sort of thing. So you can get to understand that journey. I should be launching that in time for the Christmas season. I was going to try and launch it by the 15th, but I still have things to do, and we still have to set that up properly. But again, you can check out the books that I've done and the projects that I did at grioenterprises.com. Okay.
Great, and we'll put the link to the website in the description of this video and also on the YouTube page.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you so much this was such a inspiring for me as a creative, and it was so good. I felt like I learned a lot, as I always do, and really nice getting to know you. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And I have loads of comments to check out. I've taken loads of notes. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, you're very, very welcome. And yeah, and I can't wait to see how this all pans out and plays out on on video and Facebook and stuff like that. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Okay. Thank you to our viewers.